Hello, my name is Maurice Washington. I want to welcome everybody to another episode of Executive Talk, those who are watching on live TV or those who are watching on social media. Speaking of social media, I want to invite you to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and also subscribe on YouTube. Now, specifically, why do we want you guys to do this? Specifically, we want to be able to communicate with you. We want to make sure that anything that you hear, you have the opportunity to tell us what you like, what you dislike, what you agree with, and what you disagree with. Why is that important? Because this show is specifically about growth. It's about this opportunity to enter into your personal life, enter into your business life, and help you grow. Executive Talk, we're a business TV show, but we bring it from a biblical point of view. What does God want you to know specifically about your operation in your business? It's very easy as a business owner to take pains for what you're doing. It is very difficult. It's no different than life. It's just another opportunity in life. I know your day-to-day as a business owner is very, very challenging. So this is why we're addressing it and allowing it and providing you a gateway for healing and understanding. And this may change the whole direction as to where you're going. So again, be open, have your hearts open, have your mind open to receive this. Don't point at your neighbor, don't point at your employees first. Look right here with you. Where do you fit? Where do you potentially fit in this show? Because I guarantee you do. Guess why? Because you have flesh, because you're human, because you're mankind. So just be open and be a good receiver. We are in the third part of the series of Can You Be Trusted? Now, immediately when you ask somebody, can you be trusted? Arrogance pops up. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I can be trusted. Yeah, I'm me. Well, let's think about it. How good are you as far as your follow-through? Have you ever not called anybody back? Have you ever not made an appointment? How do you show up on your day-to-day world? Are you really good at business, but then in your personal life, you're not good? So what I mean by that is you have two different lifestyles. If you have two different lifestyles, can you be trusted? If you're good at home, but you're not good at work as an employee or as an owner, what's going on? Can you be trusted? Ask yourself. Go in deep at this very moment, because this is the exploration that we need from you. We need this depth because this is where a lot of answers are. In our last show, we left off of now you want to be a CEO. We created a framework around trust and where it all began. And the framework was how God has created the earth. There is a cycle of life that depends on trust. It depends on trust to actually be part of everything that moves in order for the cycle of life to continue. So then if you're struggling in this place, if this is a painful area, if this is the area that you have not neglected, if this is the area where in the beginning of the show, just a second ago, I said, can you be trusted? And you say, well, yeah, of course I can. But then I start going down the pathway and you have some imbalances there. Then this is where this show comes up. This is where this first slide comes up. Now you want to be a CEO. Now you can say that, you can disconnect and say, well, I've been in business for 5 years, so, it's not me. Bring yourself back to this moment. Bring yourself to the day that you opened up this business, because the day that you opened up your business was the day that you brought yourself into it. So think about this. You have this pain, you have this untrustworthy pathway of doing things. And it's usually that untrustworthy pathway is built by your pain, your story, your lack of knowledge. In Hosea, it says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. So if there's a misunderstanding, if you're not operating on the highest level, because there is two standards in this world. There's a high level, which is a spiritual God level, or you can be walking in your fallen level. In your fallen level, you cannot be trusted. It's impossible. There is a trust issue between God and mankind based on the fallen state of being. So I want you to think about that. That's the framework in the last couple shows, so I encourage you to go back and watch them. But now, again, you want to be a CEO, or now you are a CEO. Now you have these employees. Now it's just you as a solopreneur. Now you're asking all your clients, hey, trust me, buy from me. You know, I'm an insurance broker. I'm not an insurance broker, but, you know, buy from me. I'm better than X, Y, Z. This is why we can be trusted. Okay? There is something that happens within everybody's lifestyle. Because part of that lifestyle of trust, part of that lifestyle of you have pain, yet you have access to the highest point. Yet you have pain, but you have access to a marriage. Yet you have pain, but you have access to children. Okay? Your mind, when you have that pain, needs to figure out a way to creatively, because again, figure out how to do life. Once the mind figures out a creative way to do trust, because again, you don't want to walk around, shoot, I really actually can't be trusted. No business owner goes into business thinking, well, I can't be trusted. Even the most untrustworthy people feel like they can be trusted. Is it true? Yes. You can trust that they're untrustworthy. It's just like saying nobody's consistent. Everybody's consistently either inconsistent or consistent. So that's maybe where the mix-up comes in, and that creative pattern that the enemy allows us to feel and think and get rested in, is that, yeah, you know, I can be trusted, but you're operating on a different level. You have not really looked at life from a spiritual level. You do life from an earthly level, based on your best understanding. And the mind connected with the world, the mind governed by the flesh, is hostile. Is that scripture? I didn't just make that up to sound good. That is scriptural. The mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. There's no submitting when it comes to that type of relationship. So if the mind is operating from that level, understand there is a commitment here. The mind is elsewhere. The mind is finding its truth from somewhere else outside of where God has provided. So the mind governed by the flesh has created a new truth. So if you're operating in a new truth, can you be trusted? If you're operating in the flesh and a pattern of this world, can you be trusted? Make that connection, because this is where it gets deep. I'll be the first one to admit, and you'll look at it in the first show, even in my abandoned state of being at a time in my life, in my understanding of abandonment, I thought I can be trusted and everybody else was wrong. That is a creative understanding of life. So now you elevated yourself with the emotional capacity to handle it. Did you get into that place? The place that you elevated yourself is now you want to be a CEO. Because you, as a CEO, you're in a place of influence. You have a lot of influence over people's lives. You're telling me that as a CEO, and if you have if you're on Indeed.com, for example, there's a little plug for Indeed.com. What if you have a resume builder out there and people can apply for your job? You're actually speaking that this is a job, if you're qualified, this is a job that you can come to and you can trust that we'll take care of you here. You're sending a message of trust in all the things that you're doing. Again, the cycle of life behind it is operating from trust. So again, you've elevated yourself. But guess what? You still have this emotional capacity of pain. Okay, just for an example, I was still in pain 10 years back. And this is still doing my journey of being abandoned. And having that feeling of abandonment. I elevated myself because my biggest charge was, I can do better than the company I'm working for. Shoot, they don't know what they're talking about, and it will show up in this slide. And so in that understanding, guess what? I elevated myself to a CEO level. So now you bring what you trust the most in the space, the patterns of this world. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to take you back to a relationship. I'll take you back to marriage. I'll take you back to business, all three of them at once. When you're in this space, when your mind is creatively doing life and not really understanding the spiritual concept, this is what you trust. In the scriptures, it says, do not conform to the patterns of this world. But in your pain, you will conform to the patterns of the world because this is what you can see. This is the new knowledge that you understand. Nobody wants to feel uncomfortable in their day-to-day. So you trust what you see and how you do life. So I bring this in a relationship. You bring the patterns of what you understand. You bring the patterns of the world into the space. This office space, the reason why it's here is because that office space is pure. And if you're like me, you're aesthetic, or if you like aesthetic things, that's a very nice office. That is sweet. I would actually love to find that office, as a matter of fact. But this office is pure until what comes in there? Until people come in there. It's no different than in the relationship. That everything before they met, it was pure before they met each other. Now, when they met each other and they started moving forward, they brought patterns of the world to relationship. Okay? Into the marriage is pure. Marriage is pure. But because people came into the entity, they brought the patterns of the world. So it's changed the dynamic of whatever you trust the most is what you bring into the environment. That is your baggage, is what you trust the most. If that's what you trust the most, that's your paradigm. That's the level of understanding that you're operating with, which brings in a major internal conflict to the table. It has altered your whole body. When you trust this, it's actually altered everything, every senses that you have. But there's a disconnect. The enemy will make sure that there's a disconnect that you don't see. Now, when you struggle with being trusted, one, if not all these things, have a ripple effect. And what happens is you are feeling, because you feel like you're trustworthy, because you're feeling that you're on top of your game, you speak and your actions have this way. Your mind is telling your tongue and your actions and everything is starting to say, yes, I can. I'm doing the right thing. I can be trusted. But what tends to happen is the enemy will blind you. In our last show, we talked about how you have a hardened heart and their eyes, they can't see now. You can't see anymore. You have a healthy disconnect from you. The thing about these things is you can only think about your intentions, what you started off, what you intended to do in the very beginning. That is at the height of what you're on purpose at one point. But what happens is things start to break down. Once you start to be clever, because you're actually being clever, you're not being truthful, you're being clever, things have changed now. That means what you start to say does not meet your actions. That means your actions are not matching with what you're saying. And now your mind and your heart goes into defense. Your flesh goes into defense. It's not even your heart, because your heart's not even there. Because your heart would have told you, no, you're not trustworthy. That's the issue right there. But your flesh goes into defense and says, why don't people understand? Why not? What's going on with people that I told them? I thought I told them. I mean, what else do they need? Well, guess what people are receiving? There's a disconnect. If I'm an employee and I work for you, and there starts to be a disconnect with the actions and what's being said, and there's something that's happening. It's your trust into the environment, into this pure, lovely office space. Now it's becoming defiled. Things have altered, things have changed, but you're unaware of that change, and so are the people that are working with you. So now your employees struggle every day with what they see. Now, in Proverbs 23:17, it reads, "Do not let your heart envy sinners, but always continue in the fear of the Lord." Now, let me give you an example. When I gave you that example of 10 years ago, I started my own business. This is where I was. Now, if I'm in pain, how do you think I read the scripture? Do let your heart envy sinners, because I was looking at my boss at the time, because this is employees every day. Okay, so I'm getting paid by you. You're crazy. As a matter of fact, you're just dishonest. But you're making money, and I'm sitting here working for you. I'm in a place of envy. Because I'm looking at these actions, and things are starting to change in my mind. Your everyday employees are struggling with, how is that the boss? How did they even get that position? So are you dishonoring at this point? Your employees are dishonoring Ephesians 6:5-9. Employees, obey your earthly masters as you would obey Christ. Because they're in conflict with the lack of trust that they're experiencing in the office space. So by default, what you do is go back to your flesh, your senses, and say, I'm not going to honor them. I'm not going to obey them. I'll do it for you. Because again, I came into this environment with the understanding that I trust that you know what you're doing, but I see you're doing everything by the seat of your pants. Well, guess what? In my lifestyle, I've made commitments financially with my creditors that I work here and this. So you're messing with my security. So now there's conflict that has entered into this office space. This beautiful office space right here. All that defilement has jumped in there and taken root. So now, Galatians 5:19-21 reads, the acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. Okay, so let's just stop right there. You guys have seen this before. I warned you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. Now, what happens, it just says envy, but the scripture says, and you're at a place of envy in the office space. Have you, because of your trust issues and the actions that you're providing to the people that work for you, are you getting people in this place of envy? The environment will be filled with whatever is utmost important to the office and what understanding. I want you to think about this. You will create an office based off of selfish ambition. Maurice, how in the heck do you figure that? Do you know that if I'm operating like this, you bring what you trust the most into the office? Is a pattern of this world that we live in selfish ambition? You know, as a business owner, when I jumped into the business first, I had selfish ambition. I just told you that I envied my business owner, or the business owner I was working for, because I'm like, how in the heck is he making money? He doesn't even know what he's doing. My envy brought me into business ownership. Okay? So again, you bring what you trust the most. So if you trust the patterns of this world, this is one of the patterns of this world: fits of rage, envy, selfish ambition. In business ownership, this is one of the major components of business ownership. This is what keeps people going. Your business can struggle all day long, but you'll say, well, no, it's not that. We just got to try harder. Selfish ambition will keep you from the truth. It does it every single time. But you will create, because again, what happened in the beginning? God gave you his authority to create. That same ability, enemy will, if you're operating from a fallen state of being, if you're operating in flesh, if you're operating in flesh, this is what you bring to the environment. So again, in the relationship, in the marriage, in the office space. You will bring selfish ambition to the table. It will alter everything that you understand and how you respond to something that's pure and that requires people to be involved. This selfish ambition has defiled your office. If you want to understand why there's disconnect all over the place, guaranteed you created this. Now you can say, well, if they would have listened to me, well, I think they did at some point. But because they lost trust, they went into their own way of doing things and have created a way to get it done. Something else has taken root into your office. Those good intentions are now turning into something else. Now that the enemy has lowered your standard. See, that was a whole plan in the beginning from the enemy. Everything, if you want to find out what's going on with life, just go to the Bible. It is right there. Because what did he do in Genesis 3? He lowered the standard. He lowered the standard of Adam and Eve. And they went into their creative way of hiding their nakedness, didn't they? So that symptom of being creative to hide what's going on with you is part of our nature, our flesh, our human nature. Instead of calling human nature our flesh. This is what the enemy, or what God is actually warning us against. As long as this lower standard is here, you give authority for that dialogue, for selfish ambition to start to walk and operate within the environment. That's what the enemy, so when people say, yeah, I just feel like I'm under attack all the time. Well, of course, as long as there's a lower standard, the enemy, you give the enemy authority to usher in his dialogue of doing things. The earthly pattern of doing marriage, the earthly pattern of doing dating, the earthly pattern of doing work in office and building a business. As long as there's isms in your office, guess what? The earthly pattern is already in your office. You created a bridge for it. When you lower your standard, you automatically give authority over. The enemy doesn't have to ask for it. He just has to deceive you. You have to accept it, and your authority is given over. It happens that quick. Go back in Genesis and find that relation. Now that the patterns of this world have taken root, guess what else is entered into this office space? The thorns and thistles. Soon as trust is broken, and this is where everything needs to go to a point of reset. That's why I asked you in the very beginning of the show, can you be trusted? Look at the relationships that are happening around you. It's an extension of you. It is an extension of what you created. You didn't create that argument, right? Yeah, you're correct, because they were doing their thing. But because the standard's low, that argument is ushered in. It's already in there. You gave authority to that argument. So yes, that is your created environment. Now that the patterns of this world have taken root, okay, so let's go back. Now, if there's an argument between employees, guess what? There's fits of rage in your office. Are we seeing the picture here? So now, where do you think stress and tension in your office space comes from? Why do you think that happens? Do you think people have nothing else to do in their day and you know what? I need to be stressed. You know what? I need to enjoy the mess out of Saturday and Sunday because by Sunday at 8 o'clock, oh goodness, I got another Zoom call. Oh goodness, I gotta go into the office space and hear Yakety Sam. Oh my gosh, because they're gonna have an attitude. That's stress and tension. That is what's been created because the standard of trust is low. You think gossiping is part of our normal experience? No, it's not supposed to be us, but from the flesh, it absolutely is. That's the earthly pattern. Because I might be trying to sabotage some folks by gossiping. I'm certain that I'm bringing this up now. It's going to be a whole nother series in itself. Now, trust does not exist in the office. John 10:10, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. Understand this. If you don't understand the Bible, I'm not asking you to at all. That's up to you. That's a choice. But don't deny this factor. Don't deny the fact that the enemy has stolen peace and destroyed other people within that. The enemy stole trust from you. The enemy stole your standard and destroyed the office with something else. This is the fruit of what everybody feels. When your mind goes crazy and your heart goes crazy, like, man, this thing's just out of control. It's unbelievable. I can't stand it. This is, you guys, as far as a roller coaster, I remember the first experience I had a roller coaster. It was exhilarating, but I couldn't wait to get off. Okay? It's one of those, it's the same feeling. Yeah, it had a thrill, but then by the time 5 o'clock comes, you're just like, you know what, I'm done with work. Let me get off. That's what happy hour comes from. Okay, that'll be a whole nother conversation. However, the point is, I'm trying to take off from all this roller coaster from 8 hours or for 12 hours. That's intense. Okay, I'm trying to figure out a way to shut this tension down that I have and what's going on. That's what happy hour. So your office is leading people to happy hour. Think about this, business owners. Think about this, employees. What influence do you have over the office space? Is anything that was mentioned here today true? If it is, that's the answer. This is the moment of truth. Take note, and this is that moment when you can make a decision. In our next show, we're going to talk about how that decision, how you can change that. It's a journey, but nonetheless, it's something that needs to happen. I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up today and enjoying the show and being part of it with me. But right now, I actually have to get back to work, so we'll see you next week. Have a good day. Bye-bye.